The last two pieces of using our API have been getting data. We've been pulling data from our API, given that we give it something like a latitude and longitude or a search term. What we want to do now is actually do something where we're going to push data to the API. So we're going to be looking at these heart icons here. And when you heart something, it's going to add it to a list of your hearts. And you can click on your heart page and you can see a list of everything that you have then hearted. So that's going to be using the API. Why? Because when you click on the heart, we don't want to actually push you to any page. We want that just to happen in real time. So let's dive into that now. First thing that we need to do is actually modify our user schema, because the way that this is going to work is that every time you heart a store, the ID of the store will be put into your actual user account. And then we're going to have a property on the user called hearts. So let's open up user.js, which is our model here, and we're going to add a new field, which is going to be called hearts. Now, what will the hearts look like? Well, it is going to be a relationship because the user is going to heart many stores, but there's going to be many. So how do you do a relationship with multiple object IDs? Well, you say it's going to be an array, and then each of the things in the array are going to be an object with the type of mongoose.schema, capital S, dot object ID, capital O, capital I, and that will tell it that it is expecting an ID. And then we tell it the ref is going to be in the store, right? So a couple things. We are telling it that hearts is going to be an array of IDs that are related to a store. That way, when we want to populate our hearts, we're going to see all of the stores in this actual hearts, not just a list of IDs. So good. That's the first part done. Next, we need to create some sort of interface to actually handle hearting each of these. So let's open up our storecard.pug. And you see that we have all this action already here. We're going to do another action here. We're going to say if user. And what that will do is we're going to check if they're logged in first, because there's no sense in showing the hearting interface to people who are logged out. And if that is true, we're going to have a store action and a store action dash dash heart. So it's a class of store action and a class of store action heart. Then inside of that, we need an actual form tag, right? Because whenever you're submitting data to the backend, it's easiest just to have a form tag. That way, if JavaScript does ever fail, then it will still work as a regular form submit. So we have a form with a class of heart, and the method on that is going to be post. And the action is going to be, we can actually use backticks here, /API /stores / we're going to grab the store ID as part of the store endpoint, just to show you that you can also pass IDs via the URL, and then /heart, because that's the actual action that we're going to do there. Then inside of that, we're going to have a button with the type of submit. So rather than having an input with the type of submit, we're using a button. Why? Because we actually want to put some HTML inside of a button. You can't put HTML inside of an input. That will have a name of heart. And then inside of it, we're going to use our bang equals h.icon. That's going to be our heart icon. You'll see sort of an ugly button. We'll worry about the look in just a second. But if you were to press that, it should submit this form and then give us a 404, because we haven't actually set up this route yet. So let's try it. Click one. There we go. We tried to post to API stores this actual store ID /heart. That's what's next up. We need to actually go and make the route and the method to handle that. Open up index.js. We'll go down to where our API is, and we'll make the route for that. Router.post, not get, /API /stores /ID /heart. And then when that happens, we are going to catch errors. We're going to use the store controller .heart store. Good. Then we'll go into our store controller here. Go down to the bottom. We'll make a new one. Exports.heart store is equal to, we'll make it a sync, request response. Now, what we need to now get is first we need a list of the person's stores, because we need to know if they already have the store in their hearts. Then by posting to this URL, we're going to remove it. If they all don't have it, then posting to this URL will add it. It's sort of like a toggle where we don't really care all that much about if they have done it or not. It will just do the opposite. So we need to get a list or an array of hearts. So we'll say const hearts is equal to, we'll take the user request.user.hearts, and we will map over each of them, where each object that comes back, and this is a little bit weird because you think that we already have an array of IDs, because if we look at our here, you have an array of IDs, but it's really an array of objects, and we want just an array of strings that is specific to that user. So we'll take each object and we'll run the object.toString, and that will work because MongoDB has overwritten the toString method on each of the objects, which will allow us to get a list of possible strings. So let's just console log hearts when we post to that, and then let's actually just say res.json hearts. Let's send the data back to the person, give them a list of their actual hearts when they have it. So go back to stores here, click on hearts for one of them, and we get back an empty array. Why is that? Well, because I'm new. I don't have any hearts in. I don't have a heart. I'm a terrible person. I don't have a heart, but I don't have any hearts in my array yet. So now what we need to do is we're going to be taking the user and we're going to be running one called find one and update, which is going to allow us to find the user and then update the actual thing. However, the operators in which we can either take it out of or put it into needs to be a variable. So we're going to make a new variable here called operator. And the operator is going to check if our hearts includes the current ID that's being posted, right? So if we have an array, we're going to say, is this one already in the array? And if it is, then we'll remove it. If it's not, then add it, right? So we're going to say hearts.include. And then how do we get this from the URL? Well, we told it would be a param of ID. So we can say request.params.id. And if it is in there, the operator is going to be pull, which is the MongoDB operator of removing from this array on our user. Otherwise, the opposite of pull is going to be something called $add_to_set. And the reason why it's not push is because we want it to be unique. If we use, there is an equivalent to push in MongoDB, which it will just add it multiple times. But by saying add_to_set, it will make sure that we don't accidentally, for whatever happens, we don't accidentally add it twice to a specific user. If it's already there, it will just duplicate it over. So then we can say const user is equal to await user, capital U, dot find by ID and update. Woo, that was a long one. And we got to find the current user, request dot user dot underscore ID. We're going to find the current user. And when that happens, we are going to update it. I'm going to put these on their own line here. Let's put find it, not the, put that on its own line. Then once we have found it by ID, we are going to pass it all of the data. And in this case, we would normally say we're going to pull the hearts property, which is going to be request.params.id, and that would take it out. Or we're going to say add to set, and that's going to put it into our array. But because we've put it in a variable, we can use the computed property names in ES6, which is square bracket operator. And what that's going to do is it's either going to replace itself with pull or add to set. Okay. And then what we also need as a third option here, we'd say new is true. And what that will do is by updating the user, it's going to return to us the updated user rather than the previous user. I'll show you what that means in just a second. So we have this user here. Well, let's response.json the actual user. And let's go back, give it a refresh, and let's actually post to one of these. And oh, we get user is not defined. And why is that? It's because we actually haven't worked with the user here just yet. So let's go to the top here and import the user. Here we go. We'll duplicate that and we'll just say mongoose.model user. Now, if I go back to my stores and heart one of them, look what happened. So what we did, let's go over that again. We posted to this URL with the ID in it. And what MongoDB will do is it will get a list of the user's hearts. In this case, it was an array of nothing. Then it will check if that heart is already in that array. And if it is, it will pull it, meaning it will take it out. If it's not, it will add to set, meaning it will put it in. Then we went ahead and found the current user, updated their hearts property, and then we said new is true. And if we didn't have that on there, it would have returned to us hearts it still would have added it, but it would have given us the empty array because it by default will return to you the user before it's been updated, not after. So we say new, it's true to have that. Good. So now if I go back and I go to another store and heart it, it should say, there we go. Our hearts is an array of 2 things. And let's do one more donut monster heart. Now there's 3 things. Now, if I go back and heart donut monster once more, it takes it out because at this point it was included in the hearts array. And then we used pull instead of add to set in the last 2. Refresher page, you should now see that we have 2 under hearts because we have hearted 2 of the actual stores. And how is that working? Well, if we open up our layout.pug and we go down to where it says heart, we say if user, then it will give us the icon heart. And then this is the line right here, line 29 or so. It says the heart count will first check if there's a user.hearts. It first checks if there's actually a hearts property, because as we're developing this, we just added it in. And then if there is a hearts array, it's going to just tell us the actual length of the number of hearts that we have there. That's why it says 2. If I go and heart another one, there's 3 in there, and I go back and I refresh, that will now show me 3. So that shows me that data. Let's also update this interface here so that it will be red if the heart is hearted, and it will be white if it's unhearted. So go back to our store card here, and we need to do something similar to what we just did. Is first we need to get a list of all of the heart strings, and then we also need to check if that is included in it. So let's go right above this button here, and we'll make a variable. And the way that you make a variable in Pug is you do a dash. We'll say const heart strings is equal to user.hearts.map. So we're going to map over the user's hearts, and we're going to take each object and we're going to return the object.toString. Again, that will just give us a list of the actual hearts that the person has. And how can you tell if that worked? You could do a quick pre equals h.dump heart strings. Let's see here. So now for each store, we're seeing a list of all of the user's heart strings. And then we also already have the current store's string, because we could dump that as well, which is store._id. So now what we're going to do is we're going to check if the store's ID is in that array of hearted stores. And if it's not, we'll make it white. If it is, we'll make it red. So what we'll do here is we'll make a new variable called const heart class. And we'll say if the heart strings includes the store._id.toString, because the store ID is actually not a string. It's technically an object which has some methods on it. So we want to make it a true string. Otherwise, the includes won't work. If that is true, then we will make the heart class heart__button -- hearted. And then otherwise, what we're going to do is just return nothing there. Then we can get rid of these 2 pre's and say class is equal to heart class. Give that a save. Now when we refresh, you'll see that the white ones are unhearted and the red ones are hearted. One other thing is that we have this white background on it, and that's because our button also needs just a base class of heart__button. Let's see if that works. Beautiful. So now it is white or red, and if I were to click one of these, it still submits us to the page. I can go back and refresh the page, and that one should now be red. There it is, red. What we're going to do now is actually use our API endpoint to make this happen automatically, so you don't actually have to leave the page to heart something. We're going to turn the color red. We're going to actually add it to the user, and then we're going to also update this little thing up here. So let's go and make ourselves a new JavaScript file. So public JavaScript modules, make a new file called heart.js. And then open up your delicious-app.js. So those are the 2 that we need open right now. And in our heart.js, we just have a couple lines of JavaScript. First thing we need is Axios. Then we're going to make a function called Ajax heart. And that is going to take in the event that we're going to hook up to the submit event on this little form tag that we have here. So, and then we want to export that. Good. Then we want to go into our delicious app, and we are going to import that Ajax heart. So I'll say import Ajax heart from. What we're going to do down here is we're going to select all of our heart forms, and we can use $. That's document.query selector all form.heart. So any form that has a class of heart, and you can put that in a variable if you want. So const heart forms equals, and we can console log the heart forms just to make sure that we are pulling them up. Let's see here. Open up your console and refresh the page. And you see that we have 19 heart forms on this page. Why? Because there's 19 stores on our actual page. Good. And then we can just take those heart forms and we can use the on, or which is like the add event listener. We can listen for the submit event. And when the submit event happens, we are going to run our function called Ajax heart. Good. So select all the forms. When the forms are submitted, then call Ajax heart. And this is really nice with this Bling.js is that you can listen for events on a node list rather than having to loop over every single one. So we'll go back into our heart.js, and you tell me, how do you stop a form from submitting itself? Well, you just you take the event, and you call prevent default. Then we can console log heart it. Now give this a refresh and click on your heart, and you don't see anything actually happen because we've stopped the default, which is the post, and we are taking over with JavaScript. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually make the post happen with JavaScript rather than use the browser to post that actual data. So we can keep that console log there, and we're going to take our Axios, and we're going to .post to this.action. Why? Okay, hold on. Let's comment that out. Console log this. What is this going to be equal to? This will be equal to the thing that this function was called against, which is going to be the form tag. And then we need this action because that's the URL we want to hit. So if we Axios post to this.action, we can chain a.then on, which gives us our response, and chain a.catch on. I believe I forgot the catch in the last one. So make sure you go back and grab that and just console.error it or handle it however you please there. So first thing we want to do is let's just console log request.data or response.data and see if it's actually working. So Randy's joined. I'm going to heart it. And we hearted it. And pretty soon after, we get an object come back, which has our hearts array. Now we have 5 things in our hearts array. And if I refresh this page, this should now be red. Beautiful. Now if I click it again, it should take it off. See, our hearts array is 4, and I refresh the page, it's going to be white. So we don't want to have to refresh the page to see both that interface there happen, as well as this little number should be updating itself. So we're going to check if the heart is already hearted. So make a variable called isHearted, and we're going to simply take this dot heart. Whoa, what is this dot heart? Back it up. This we already talked about is the form tag, and heart is going to be a sub property or a sub element inside of it. And how does that work? Well, if you have this, which is our form tag, and then if you have any elements inside of your form tag that have a name attribute, you can access those elements by saying this dot the name attribute. So this dot heart is going to give us our actual button. Okay, good. So say this dot heart dot class list dot toggle. We're going to toggle the class of heart underscore underscore button dash dash hearted. And make sure you don't put like a dot in front of there. I know a lot of people have like a weird habit of toggling class with a dot in front of it. So take that off. And then we'll just go into console log is hearted. See what we got there. Okay, so both of these are hearted. So when I click it, it says false, and it will take the class off. Click that, it will say false, and it'll take the class off. And this is 5 now. I refresh the page, it should say 3. Good. Click it, turns it red again. Click that, turns it red again as well. Refresh the page. I've got 5. So good. We've got our functionality happening. We've got our interface updating. The last little piece that we want is this little number needs to now be updated. So what we're going to do is we're going to select that heart count here. If you inspect it, there is a class of heart-count on it. So we will import our Bling, import our dollar from Bling. Go down here, and we'll say .heart-count .text content is equal to response.data.hearts.length. Why? Because response.data is going to give us the entire user. .hearts is going to give us the hearts array, and length will tell us how many hearts are in that array. Now if I give that a save here, we got 5. If I click it, it will bring it right down to 4. If I heart it again, it'll bring it up to 5. So that is now happening in real time. Last cool thing I want to do is when we click on one of these, let's make a little heart sort of like jump out of there. And what I have done is if you add a class of heart button float to this thing, it will automatically make a little heart float out of it. So let's go find this button here. And if I were to then, it's a little bit cramped in here, but if I were to give it a class of heart __ button -- float, and watch when I hit enter. Ready? Put your eyes on the heart. I'm going to hit enter. You see that? Where did that come from? Well, there is a CSS animation that I've put in the hearts.scss file. And on our buttons, I have an after element here where the content is just a heart, and the font size and the pixel and the opacity is 0. And then when it is floated, when it has a class of float on it, I am just going to add an animation of fly over 2.5 seconds. And what fly will do is it's a CSS keyframe that will sort of just transition it from where it is up, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and then eventually to opacity 0, so you cannot see it any longer. So it's kind of fun. And the way that we can do that is we want to check if it is hearted. So we'll say if is hearted, then we are going to say this .heart .class list .add. We're going to add that class of heart __ button -- float. Let's see if that works. Oh, didn't work because I forgot a T. Let's try it again with the French. So that worked great. What we need to do is after 2.5 seconds, we need to take that off. So we'll say set timeout. We'll have a arrow function, and we can simply say this .heart .class list .remove. I'm going to remove the heart button float after 2.5 seconds. And the reason why I use an arrow function there is so I can use this and still reference our actual form tag. So that will just take it off. Otherwise, you'll have these invisible hearts, and sometimes they can get in the way of clicking other elements on the page. So we want to make sure that we just remove it entirely, and then that will also allow us to unheart it and then heart it again, and over and over and over again. So that is adding our hearts to our actual data. If you ever want to see that data about your user, you can just go into your layout.pug. And again, anywhere you want, you can just do a quick dump, h.dump. You can dump your user, and you're going to see that your user now has a hearts array, which has items taken on and away from it. So I'm going to take that away, refresh, and we're good to go.